Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Mr. James Presley. Mr. Presley, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Man, it's a pleasure having you here. And I will say, to be an educator for 28 years, that's some great service. That's exceptional. That shows how much you love serving and how much you want to see the next generation to become the best they can be. But before we get into the conversation or the questions, I would love for you to share with the audience about you and some of the things that you have done so they can get an idea of who you are before we get into the questions. So, Mr. Presley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, like you said, I am Principal James Presley. I'm the proud principal of Sumter Prep Academy. It's located in Wildwood, Florida. That's in Central Florida. I've been the principal of that school for 10 years, and it's located in my hometown. I've had the honor of serving in my hometown where I was reared as a boy for 25 of the 28 years that I've been in education. And it's been a blessing to serve in almost every capacity of the school system in Sumter County. I've been, of course, a teacher, coach, assistant principal, of course, principal at my alma mater, Wildwood High School. And recently, 9 years ago, I transferred over to what was then known as Sumter Alternative Schools. It was an alternative school being led by a friend of mine, actually a mentor. His name is Rodney Rocker, Senior, and he was the gentleman who, on a corner store, back when I was trying to figure out which direction to take in life after graduating out of college from Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida, where I was blessed enough in 2008 to be inducted into their Hall of Fame. But back then, I was trying to figure out the direction I would take as a career, and just walked into Rodney Rocker, who was an administrator at the time, one of our few African-American administrators in that area, and asked him, would he show me how to become a teacher? And he walked me through teacher certification. And fast forward to 2013-14, I had a defining moment where I was married, of course, and two kids, Malachi and Shekinah. They were in middle school. And I was trying to determine which direction to go because I was the principal of a 6 through 12 school called Wildwood Middle High School. And anybody in education that know anything about combination schools, as the principal, you're pretty much living in the building. There's an activity every other night or something going on at the school. And I remember starting to feel like I was becoming a public success, but a private failure. My daughter was getting ready to go to her 7th grade spring formal. And some kind of way, Dr. Cross, the same night, we had scheduled the senior prom at the same school. She was attending my school, 6 through 12, Wildwood Middle High School. And I don't know how I didn't catch the conflict, the personal and the professional conflict, but she reminded me as I walked to the door to leave to go and greet the high schoolers at the prom. She said, "Daddy," and I stopped in my tracks, Dr. Cross. She said, "Are you going to be around when I get dressed to take pictures?"
Wow.
And my hand was at the doorknob, and I can remember saying, "Lord, how am I going to answer this? I can't be late to this spring form." And mind you, I have been the principal of that school and all over the place for years, but I never had to juggle between my child and that school.
Yes.
And I gave her my answer. I went on to the prom with the seniors, and Dr. Cross, I was sitting at a round table watching everybody else in town's children enjoying the prom. And my phone started lighting up. It was the pictures that my wife was sharing on Facebook with all of our family members in my child's spring formal pictures. And I was MIA.
Wow.
And I said this at that table. I looked up, I looked down at my phone, and when I looked up the second time, I said, "I'm done."
Wow.
There's no way I'm going to continue to try to be successful publicly while I'm torn privately. So I got home and I told my wife I was done. I told her that Monday morning I was going to call my superintendent and request a transfer. And she didn't believe me, but Monday morning, 5:30 in the morning, I was in my office like this, tapping the desk, waiting for my superintendent, who I knew would show up around 7 at his desk. And I called him and I respectfully asked for a transfer to the alternative school. I was simply trying to get my life back, because sometimes we can be so caught up trying to prove, trying to overcome obstacles that things and individuals have placed in our way as Black leaders, that we lose scope of what's really important, and that was my family. But God had another plan, and I'll share that tonight, how God took that transfer and caused me, through leadership and his direction and other leaders' direction, to create a school called Sumter Prep Academy that did not exist. And the PREP stands for Positive Response Education Program. It's a school built on a 3-to-1 ratio of being intentional about recognizing and celebrating the accomplishments of students weekly, and celebrating them hard. We celebrate hard at my school. But that's me in a nutshell, and I'm super excited, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to share with your audience tonight.
Oh man, thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing that part of your story with us, because you give us, the listeners, an idea of who you are and the incredible work and dedication that you have put in as an educator. And yes, as you shared, when you have to make the decision, and sometimes that's what it boils down to. God put us in a situation where we think we're giving up something that we love, but we just have to take that leap, and then
Yes,
greater opportunity opens. It may not even
yes.
be what we think we want,
Mhm.
but we know that we may have to take that first step. And just by taking the step, we get the perfect opportunity. So sometimes that's how life is. I've seen it so many times. But God wants you sometimes to make the move. I'm not going to just open the door for you. Make the move.
Make the move.
As you mentioned, make the call. And once you
Mhm.
make the call, everything start to fall in place. So, man,
Yes,
thanks for sharing that. And
thank you.
and as we go, I know you have so much more to share. So I'm going to start off with my first question. What is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
I think to make a positive impact, the mindset has to be positive thinking mindset. We must have a positive thinking mindset. I believe that as a man thinks in his mind, so is he. Whatever a man or a person, that is a man or female, has in their mind, whatever they are thinking on, whatever they're building their every move or decisions on, that is who that person is. So I think first we start with the thinking processes of individuals. I know that when I took over this new school, that was one of the first things that we ended up doing. We ended up talking about how we think. What do we think about the students that attend the school? When the superintendent granted me my request and allowed me to transition to this school, a few weeks after, he asked me what was my vision for the school. And I told him that I did not know. And I don't know how many educators are watching. If a superintendent asks a principal what his or her vision is, and that principal says, I don't know, then the superintendent looks back at that individual as if they grew two heads. But then I qualified the statement. I was in my around my 18th or 19th year in education, and I had learned all of the right things to say. I knew exactly what I needed to say to the superintendent to answer that question. But I was at a time and a place that I was keeping it 100 with everything that I did. Everything was going to be authentic. Everything was going to be what I felt at the moment. I wasn't giving cookie cutter answers. So I qualified it by telling him that I had since learned that you cannot take vision and sit it on people and ask them to run with it. It will wear them out. When I was at Wildwood Middle High School for 2 years, that's exactly what I did. I made the mistake of taking what I felt and sensed that I should change as the leader of that school, and I sat it on the people, and they could not carry it.
Wow.
My zeal for change, and my zeal to see my alma mater, the school that raised me up as a boy, was overwhelming the people that I was in charge to lead. My zeal was overwhelming them. It was too much for them. So I told the superintendent that because I had learned a valuable lesson about vision, that I would need to go and do a walkthrough of that school, and I would need to have discussions with the individuals that I was now in charge to lead. And so that's what I wanted to do first. I wanted to go sit down and break bread. I've learned that a sitting place, before we start running with vision and running with purpose and running with ideas and running with strategies and running with activities and running with implementation, it is best to sit down in a quiet place and just listen. I learned that a quiet place is better than a loud place. Making a lot of noise and bringing a lot of attention to oneself as leader is not effective. It's the quiet place. So I went and I talked to those faculty and staff members, and I just jotted down what they said to me. And then in reviewing my notes, I had an aha moment. And the aha moment was this. I realized that that school was built on a very strict and stern set of rules and consequences. They were established in, if you do this wrong, we will do this in response. And so I went back to them. I met with them individually, and then I requested to meet with them as a group. And I had one question, because the second thing I learned about positive impact, to your question, is the leader does not have to have the correct answer. The leader has to know the right question to ask, not the answer. And that took the pressure off of me. All of these years of trying to be the leader who had all the answers. So it was to create positive impact, we must be question-driven and not answer-driven. If we can ask the right question and pull the answer that we know is the answer out of those that we are leading, it guarantees automatic vision ownership and not vision buy-in. I had tried vision buy-in. Vision buy-in is that we run around and we convince those to follow the vision that we have. We try to get them to buy in. We sell the vision. Vision is not for sale. Vision is for impartation. We impart the vision by making it plain, and the simplest way to make something plain is to ask the right question. So this is the question that I asked that group of people. I said, I looked over my notes. I studied them. I was trying to find you all in the notes. And I only have one question for the group. And when the room got quiet, and I felt that quiet space, intuition, wanting to know, like, what is he talking about? I said, this is my question to the group, and only question. What do you do at this school when your students does something right?
Wow.
And then I sat back. Because out of all the questions I asked them in individual meetings, I couldn't find it anywhere in the notes.
Wow.
And they said this. They just looked at me. The room was still.
Wow.
The answer was nothing.
Wow.
I had come out of a school system where all we did, Dr. Cross, was punish kids.
Wow.
I start feeling like the popo being called on African Americans because they're walking in the wrong community. I start feeling like the popo being called on students because They talk different. I started feeling like the popo who was being called on students because they look different. They act different. Come and get these different Black students out of my room. I was the popo.
Wow.
And I was sick of being called. I had to change my mindset to positive thinking, to see something in a child that nobody else sees.
Wow.
Because if this teacher named Susan Beisdorfer hadn't seen in me, one day as a senior, the starting five walked into her classroom. We had all gone out the night before, and we had cut this style in our hair, and we walked in her classroom. We were getting ready to get it done that night at that game. And when I walked in, the last person in the line, she stopped me. Wow. And she said, James, I don't like your haircut. That's not you. And for the first time, I heard in a person's voice outside of my mother, who raised 7 of us on $2.10 an hour in welfare and promised that we would never stay on welfare. We were getting off of it. I heard something in that teacher's voice that made me feel some kind of way. Wow. It made me feel like she saw something else. This lady, Susan Beisdorfer, became my mom when I went to college from that school. She literally would drive to St. Augustine to see me and to continue to build me up as little JP growing up in Wildwood. See, we have to see something through a positive lens.
That's right.
It's a lens that very few are willing to look through.
Yes.
They think that it is too much to look through the positive lens, when it really takes more energy to look through the negative lens. It's just that our mindsets have been conditioned to be so consequential that we don't know how to celebrate.
Yes, yes, yes. But man, you have said so much in answering that question in regards to positive impact, from just the positive thinking and the positive mindset and see the positive in others. But I like the approach that you have used, because in environments at times, even though educators are entrusted to educate, to teach, to encourage, we know that some educators are conditioned to see the negative, and it affects a lot of us as Black, especially the Black kids, the Black students, that they're going to see the negative, even though something good is there in that child, that student. And if we don't intentionally look for that good, that positive, and maybe it's that one incident will change that child's perspective of themselves.
All it takes is one.
Yes.
All it takes is one. And I wanted to jump right into that one, because I want to tell a story about one student who embraced it and made it a part of the culture of the school. So when I asked them the question, Dr. Cross, what do you do when students do things well on the campus, and no one had an answer, then I began to share vision, and I made it very plain. I believe that we write vision and we make it plain so that those that are going to carry it can run with it. So I made it plain. I said, this is what we're going to build. We're going to build a 3-to-1 ratio. And that 3-to-1 ratio is going to be, we are going to recognize and celebrate students 3 times as much for positive behaviors than we write them up for negative behaviors weekly. We're going to build a 3-to-1 ratio where they have an opportunity to be celebrated 3 times as much for positive behaviors than writing them up for negative behaviors. We will write up for negative behaviors, but we will write up 3 times as much for positive behaviors. So we created a little green card, and every week we would give every faculty and staff members 3 green cards. They would write 3 green cards to 1 short form, 3 green cards to 1 short form. If you write 2 short forms, we're going to write 6 green cards. We're going to be intentional about, in this school, the pen is used 3 times as much for positive than it is for negative. So we decided that's what we would do. And we also said that a parent should have an opportunity for 3 positive phone calls to every negative phone call weekly. We're going to celebrate, and then we're going to call the parents about the celebration. So we would write the green cards, and every Friday we would celebrate, and have been celebrating every week for 9 years.
Wow.
9 years we have thrown a celebration for everyone who has met the qualification and earned a green card to come into a room where there's DJing, there's video games, there's cafe, there's board games, there's ceiling games, there's all types of activities that students like, food, drinks, all that you can eat. We celebrate big at my school, 3 times as much. And so after the celebrations, our first period teachers, they receive those green cards by whomever received a green card in their first period classes, and they must, for 9 years every week, they must call the parent of every one of those students and read that green card to the parent and log it on a parent log, celebration log that I read and have been reading for 9 years weekly. Why? Because positive begots positive.
Yes, yeah.
They are sending me positive information about parents. I'm taking it, and it's building up my positivity.
That's
Every
right.
week that I get to read a parent that cries on the log and starts crying, and teacher is writing, I read the green card to Miss So-and-so, and she started crying. She just said, my child's been in education for 8 years and nobody has ever called me with positive news. Or I read the green card log and there's a parent on there going, wait a minute, are you sure? You sure you're talking about my Johnny? Because Johnny has never, ever had teachers calling me about positive news weekly. Are you sure you're talking about my child? Yes.
But man, that is so powerful, like real powerful. Because as you just said, the parent saying, are you talking about my child? So the parent may even reinforcing the negative behavior by telling that child that you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, you are this and you are that. And for them to hear something different from what they have been thinking about their child, it changes their perspective as well. So the positive that you reinforce at your school, now the parents will reinforce it in the home. Man, that is really powerful. Really,
Now I know I can't tell it all in the space of time that we have, but I did say a minute ago that I was going to tell a story to this question. And the story is this: our first celebration, we're in this room, we got all of these students. Now, mind you, my students are the students who have been assigned to the alternative school. They have done some things at their home zone schools, and they're sent to me for a certain amount of time to receive consequences for their actions. So we're in a room where you got some students that, boring stuff ain't gonna hold their attention. They ain't, you're gonna have to come with it. So I'm in my first celebration, and I'm telling the students the expectations of the celebrations. I've never had one problem in a celebration in 9 years. Not an argument, not an issue, not a concern with students that have to share, and all of those things we do in the celebration. So I'm telling the students about the celebration and the expectations, Dr. Cross. I'm teaching them how to clap, because our students don't even know how to clap for each other. They know how to talk about each other things. I like your shoes, I like your shirt, your haircut. They don't know how to celebrate a person, an individual, a being. So I had to teach them how to celebrate. So I'm teaching them how to celebrate. I'm showing them how to clap. I'm showing them how not to clap. Because I told them, if you clap in a formal activity like this, you are saying to people, I am a turd.
Wow.
You do not clap like that in a formal activity. You clap like this for people. And then you cut it. Yeah. So while I'm telling them the expectation and I'm showing them the prizes in the celebration, because we have prizes for them to choose from, here's the one story. Here's the one story. All leaders, all you need is one.
Yes.
That's all, just one. So here's my one story of oneness. All you need is one. So we get ready to celebrate, Dr. Cross, and I pull the green card. We got them all in a big basket. And I pull one out and I get ready to read it. And there's 3 little middle schoolers. I don't know if you know anything about middle schoolers, but middle schoolers can do some of the darnest things. So they're just middle schoolers. So they started acting like middle schoolers. They literally were going to shut down the celebration with their little giggling and playing around like little middle schoolers. And there was one student, a 19-year-old, 6'4", 245. I won't call his name, but he wanted to celebrate and be celebrated. And he said to the middle schoolers. And when they looked at him, he said, hush, I want to hear this. I ain't never heard nothing like this in a school.
Wow.
We had no problems in the celebrations because Donald Isom, I said I wasn't going to call his name, but he's a grown man now. And I know his family, so it's cool. Said, hush, I want to hear this. And you not shutting down no celebration today, little middle schoolers. So guess who was always at the celebrations as long as he was at my school? Donald.
Wow.
Now, in that moment, when I do a lot of reflection, I started reflecting about that moment. And this is what I was led to hear and what I want to share. I think one of your questions, the next one, is asking what should future leaders or future Black leaders do in order to be impactful in their areas of influence. And this is it. Stop trying to get everyone on board. Only use one. So I looked at that principle of Donald, and this is how I implemented it. I stopped trying to get all of my faculty and staff on board. I created a model classroom, one room that I would model the vision. I put all the resources in that room. I work with that one teacher. I work with that one group of students. And then I would invite the other teachers to have faculty meetings in that room. And when they walk in that one room and they see all the resources, the new laptops, the new computers, the new screens, the new projectors, they say, how did you get that? I was like, Principal Presley, how did she get all of this stuff in here? And I said, oh, this is the model classroom for digital learning. I wanted to implement digital learning in the school. So I contacted this teacher and she agreed to do digital learning. So in her class, she got the resources because she's doing digital learning. Would you like to do digital learning? Because if you do, you can have all of the things that's in this room and more.
That's right. But you're right. Sometimes it just takes one person to agree and seize the vision. And when other people see what that person is doing, they want to be a part of it, especially when it looks good, especially when it's making a positive impact, especially when other people can see the benefit of that one change. And as people, we want to be a part of it, but sometimes not everyone is going to take the initiative. Once one person starts, you will get other people to be on board. And that's a good perspective as well. When we're thinking about creating change, when we're thinking about making a positive impact. And a lot of times with leaders, when you read leadership books, it's to get everyone on board because you want to make sure things are going smoothly. But sometimes before everyone gets on board, it's to get that one person, maybe one person with some influence to buy into the vision and to bring that vision forth. And then others will come on board to support the bigger vision. So I think that's a great way to look at it, especially when we're thinking about creating change. So my next question is, and we're focusing on Black men. So what advice do you have for the men listening and how they can play a role in creating positive change? And you may have answered some of it already, but I know with your knowledge and experience, please share how the men can
Let me
play
kick
role.
it to you like this, since we're talking to the brothers, and I'm going to talk to the brothers for real. I'm going to be 100 with the brothers. And I had to learn this the hard way. I believe that we walk through certain trials and tribulations so others can take the bridge. I don't believe that everybody has to walk through the myrrh and the murk and all of that. I don't believe that if I walk through the quicksand, you have to. I'm going to leave a bridge for you to get over, brother. So here's the deal. Many of us, because of the grace that is upon our lives, and our culture and our background and our struggle and our fight, many of us are misunderstood. Yeah. Our natural Afrocentric, the ratchetness, but still got swag and intelligence, sometimes is misunderstood by other cultures. And I'm going to say this is what I learned after years and years of trying to fix my face to be something that I'm not, because there's something in me that was instilled to me that I had nothing to do with. And I can't keep apologizing for being who I am. I'm a Black brother that's leading differently. And in this season, brother, there has to be something different about you.
That's right.
We cannot continue to allow those that don't understand it to define it, to try to break it, to stop it. Because understand this, brother, there's really only three people or three types of people in this world: builders, blockers, or breakers. There's really only three types: those that build, those that block, and those that attempt to break. Builders, blockers, and breakers. And brother, listen, when you identify who you are as a builder, because building is in our ancestral blood. That's what we do. We build. And sometimes we're called to build something out of nothing. Because if I told this audience what I'm doing with this school and what my budget is, they would say absolutely not. But listen, brother, let me talk to the brothers. Brother, listen, you have within you a grace and an anointing, a call and a responsibility to walk in it. Just walk in it. Yes, sir. When you walk in that grace and that anointing, and you walk in that calling and you're unapologetic about it, that's when things begin to move on your behalf. But as long as we prop ourselves up and try to be and act like something that we are not, then whoever has the remote control is controlling us. That's right. So don't allow somebody to prostitute your anointing and try to get you to act and be something that you were not called to act and be. Listen, I'm just a country boy from Wildwood. I'm not gonna enunciate correctly, but you're gonna get the message. I'm not going to speak it like others speak it. I don't dress like others dress. I'm good with who I am. And I know that with this grace and anointing, brother, listen to me here. With this grace and anointing that's on you to lead, if there's a frustration, it may not be you, it may be that place. So learn the lesson in that place, because that place may not be your purpose. That place may be your process. See what you done, Cross? You got me up in here. Preaching, Dr. Cross. Man, that place I've
bring
learned.
The fire, man. Bring it.
I'm going to try to bring it because it's getting stirred up. That place may be your process, and you will stay in that process until you learn the lesson of that place, because your purpose is waiting on you to manifest, because there's something in you that God has that's bigger than a place, and it's called a people. God will assign you to a people that you're anointed, but he will not release you until you learn the process of your place. So learn the lesson and understand that you are strategically placed for such a time as this, to lead in this contemporary culture that would try to confuse the next generation and get them to believe that there's something that they are not, or get them to embrace something that would cause them to abort their destiny, hence continuing the cycle of confusion and chaos in our communities. But I believe that there are brothers like Dr. Cross and others who understand the assignment, that it is not the people of the place, it's the people. We are called to a people, a certain set of people. See, there were students before I was born who needed me to lead this school because they needed something different. They needed somebody that would see something outside of what's on the rap sheet. See, at my school, my purpose is to get my students to strive for a positive route because everybody prior to me has written them a rap sheet that's negative. But that's not who they are. They were called for such a time as this for us to stir up those gifts that's in these babies that are being misunderstood by the culture.
Man, bring it. Man, you have shared so much. That which you just shared could have been the conversation in itself. When you talk about the three type of people, but go back to where you mentioned that sometimes we are misunderstood. The blessing that are on our life, the anointing that are on our lives to do some things, to do things in life, to make an impact, to lead the next generation. Being in a space where that is not understood by others, they may want to confine you. And if you're not strong, you fall prey to the conditioning or the confining. And you also said something that it has been in my spirit for a while, where when I change to make you like me, then I don't like me because who I'm pretending to be, it's only for you to like me. Then I'm walking around as someone that I don't like. I'm always going to like me first. And that's, especially when we're talking about creating positive change, I believe we have to show up as ourselves. We have to show up as our authentic self. We have to show up.
Stirring it up, Doc. Just stirring it up.
We have to. And, you know, so, man, that is a great reminder.
Let me say this. Let me say this. I didn't know if I was going to feel the release to share it, but I'll share it. I'll share it. Being misunderstood because of the grace that's on us and what God has called us to do and to be in this time. So, Dr. Cross, I am the executive pastor of a ministry that I've been a part of for since 1994. I joined the ministry, quite honestly, because my mother had just passed of cancer.
Wow.
And I was in a place where the hurt was so deep that I knew that if I didn't get myself together, get my mind together, that I was gonna abort the years that I have worked throughout the years to get to a place. So I joined this ministry that I've been a part of since 1994. And I worked my way up through the grace of God to become the executive pastor, the second to my pastor, right? I'm from the hood. I didn't go to church. I don't have second generation, nothing in me. My mother was just a praying mother who attended church and made us go to church. And then when I got old enough, I couldn't do the church thing. I just wasn't feeling church vibe, but you'll come to a place where you'll seek help from anywhere to get help. So I was at that place. So I joined this ministry, and fast forward, I get married out of this ministry. In fact, the day that I walked through that church door, the woman that I married, my wife, Yolanda Presley, she opened the door. She was ushering. She opened the door and she told the story that when I walked past her, she said, my husband just came to church. I didn't know her from Eve or nothing. She opens the door. She walks me to my seat. She confessed that I just believe this man is my husband. So long story short, we date, we get married. And then one service in 2008 or 9, I'm in a service and there's a speaker in the service. And I'm talking to a brother right now. I'm still on the brothers.
Oh, yes.
Listen to being misunderstood. So I'm in this service and the speaker from Africa is speaking and he calls my wife's name out of the blue. And then he calls my name out of the blue and asks us to come forward. I walk up with her and he looks at me. He says, principal of Wildwood Middle High School. At the time, I'm serving as assistant principal and I have done so for 9 years straight.
Wow.
2 weeks later, the principal walks in my office, my friend, my brother, and tosses me some keys. And he looks at me and says, I talked to the superintendent, had a discussion with him that I am done. And you are the next principal of this school. 2 weeks later, after that service, he don't even know this story. I never told him this story. So I don't apply for the position because I got to process what just happened. This is within 2 weeks. I got to have a conversation. I got to process this. I wait to the last day of the job opening and I apply for this job. I didn't know if I should, but I did. And the superintendent hires me and I thought, I'm on my way. Brothers, it was the most difficult 2 years of my life. I went through hell.
Wow.
And this is what ended up happening. The people that was cheering for me as the assistant principal, when I transitioned to their principal, it was as if I grew another head. I couldn't say anything correct. I was incompetent. I was like, what? And it was like, I had friends, of course, and those that I was connected to, but for the most part, it was very difficult to lead as the principal. 2 years I spent asking, what is wrong with me?
Wow. But you know, well, keep going. But I was going to say,
no, go ahead.
because you have mentioned learn the process of the place, goes back to what you said, learn the process of the place. So in the moment when you feel challenged, it may be a part of your preparation, even though it wasn't the best preparation, but just listening to those challenges, and you have mentioned earlier, learn the purpose or the process of the place. So I just wanted to interject that.
And that's it, because in retrospect, I have since asked, why were those 2 years like that? And that's when I got the answer. That was not the place. That was the process.
Wow.
That wasn't the place. That was the process. And that process, it took some things out of me. But before I left that school because of my daughter, I didn't know that this story was a part of my decision to leave.
Wow.
I had a teacher, and I felt like this teacher was bad for students, especially students of color. I felt like his management of them was not effective. And I told him that I didn't feel like he was effective. And he said to me, I told him his evaluation was coming up, and if he didn't change some things, it was going to be unsatisfactory. I'm the principal of the school. And this man says to me, you're not doing my evaluation. I'm going to call the district and you're not going to do my evaluation. And I said, excuse me, I'm the principal of the school. I decide to do the evaluations around here. I will be doing your evaluation. And if you don't change this practice in your classroom, it will be unsatisfactory. And he said, you know what? Here's the story. That's the problem with you, Mr. Presley. You're nothing like my father. My father was the greatest assistant principal this district has ever known. He had a system that they're implementing at the alternative school, where if you cut up at a school or if you get in trouble a certain number of times, you're automatically recommended to the alternative school. And that's what you should be doing. But you're on campus and you're trying to save the students that's tearing down our school. I was different. I wasn't like his daddy. There may not have been anything wrong with what he implemented at the other school, but that wasn't the school I was leading. I was leading the school where the people that gave Lois Presley, my mama, baby, eggs when they didn't have eggs to eat, grits when they didn't have grits to put on the table, bread when they didn't have bread to put on the table. These were people who helped my mother, who was working as a waitress, for $2.10 an hour, trying to raise 7 of us, and I'm supposed to ostracize their children?
Wow.
You got to be kidding me. There has to be something different about me concerning. So I thought, maybe I should go over there and undo that system. But I didn't move on that, Dr. Cross. It took that moment with my daughter to make me move on it.
Wow.
But because when he made that comment, I didn't understand that it wasn't the place. I didn't understand that that was not the place. It was just the process. Had I understood that this was just the process, I would have made the decision years ago to leave that school. But pride,
that's right,
wanting to prove them wrong, being an athlete and a competitor, wanting to win, wanting to be a winner, when God did not call me to play that game. I'm in the game of a game that I was not assigned to play, but I'm up at bat and I'm ready to hit 500 or more. That wasn't even the call for me. It was just the process to make me understand I'm going to send you to a place where everything that I've downloaded in you can be received by your leadership.
That's right, man. You give so much perspective right now. It's not even funny. Man, this perspective that you just shared, it's have answered so many questions. It have put light in spaces where you yourself sometimes be wondering why this is happening, not realizing that the where you are is just for the process, not the place. And sometimes it leads you to where what is downloaded in you
Yes.
to get in that space where you can really express that, and it being received by those around you. And one thing that I know I've come to learn, that not everyone have the capacity to receive what you have to offer, where
That
you
is correct.
you
That
know,
is
so
correct.
not everyone have the capacity to receive what you have. And I will just go back to what you have said earlier, where you identify the positives of the students. And that the individual you were just talking about, where they say we're gonna remove the ones that are breaking down our school, because they haven't realized sometimes to change what's happening in our space is to get the ones that are would be considered outcasts and
Mhm.
look for the good in those individuals, highlight the good, and make that become a part of the culture. And once it becomes the culture, then you will not have to go and look for individuals. You're going to find young people coming up to you, just want to be a part of, because they
Mhm.
said, oh, you have highlighted that in that person. You have highlighted that in that person. So I'm going
Mhm.
to make myself available.
Mhm.
And
See,
then,
the assignment is local, but the grace and the anointing and the gifts that are within us is regional.
yeah,
So the system that was downloaded in me to create at the school is now being implemented in those zone schools that I left behind.
wow,
It's being implemented in schools around the region. It's being implemented in mentor schools in the state. It's being implemented in Philadelphia. It's being implemented in Georgia. It's being implemented in South Carolina, where the anointing that is regional manifests because I stepped into the place, the not the process, but I stepped out of the process into the place, and now we're able to effect regions 2 years after creating this system. On Valentine's Day, 2 years after I started, 35 leaders from the Netherlands called the district and said, we're going to be in Florida, and we heard about this place called Sumter Alternative Schools. And we have heard that there is, they thought it was a PBIS program. We thought it was PBIS as well. It ended up being PrEP. We thought it was positive behavior intervention support system that we were doing because a doctor from the University of South Florida came to our district and had us present our plans. And when I presented mine, she asked me, could she bring her team to witness this plan in action and in motion? And as I was describing it, she came to our school and she did a walkthrough with her leaders, and I asked her to speak, and she stood up and she said, you know, when I first heard of this plan in this place, I didn't think that it was as good as Principal Presley explained it, but being here today is better than what he explained. So when those leaders called, she said, there's a place in Bushnell, Florida called Sumter Alternatives, and you must take those 35 leaders to see that program. So those 35 leaders flew over the pond. Had I stayed in the process, those 35 leaders would have still been on that side of the pond, because what's in us is regional once we begin to function in it. So Dr. Cross, they flew across, left their loved ones on Valentine's Day. 35 leaders visited our school, newspapers took it, spreading it through the region, because when you are in your place, then your vision begins to expand because it's regional. So I said that to say this to leaders who we're speaking to tonight. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than you can imagine.
Yes.
That is why in the process, he chips all of the extra off of you to see if you are still willing to work in a messy place. It is literally a process that I read. I love reading my favorite book, the Bible. I love reading it, the historical accounts in it, wherein there's a young Rudy boy, a redheaded boy. He's out working with the sheep, and there's a prophet who has come to anoint, and he's trying to anoint these boys in the house, his brothers, but the oil won't pour over the boys. And he asked the father, "Do you have another boy?" He said, "Yeah, it's the boy. He's out there working with the sheep." See, that's where many of us are. We're working in a messy place. And guess what? At the appointed time, the anointing will be stirred up in us to move in that calling and in that region. So while he is pulling the sheep out of the mouth of a bear and a lion, it's preparation for a fight with a champion.
Wow. That's a great.
It's preparation. The process is preparing us to take down and pull down systems. The process, leaders, brothers, male leaders, aspiring leaders, the process is preparing us to pull down systems that would try to keep us ensnared, keep us in bondage, keep us from not moving to the next level in what we've called to move in.
Man, that is like, man, this is powerful to say the least. And I believe it is needed to be said and needed to be heard, because when you're on your journey and when you know you have a purpose and you sometimes have to deal with what you consider maybe unnecessary oppositions. And you be wondering, why is this happening the way it is happening? There's no reason for this to happen the way it is happening. But the perspective that you shared help to put meaning to what's happening at times, knowing that the process, you have to go through the process to be prepared for the greater things that you have to do. And man, that is like, really powerful. But I know we can continue, but I'm going to go into the next question.
Sure.
Because I know you have so much more to share. And you may have actually answered part of this question, but I'm still going to ask it. How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative?
Sometimes we cannot see the trees because we're in the forest. Sometimes we have to step away and then look back, because sometimes what is right in front of our faces as Black men, we don't see it. I never saw the narrative while I was writing those short forms and calling those parents when I was in my position as assistant principal. I never saw it through a lens of all we do is consequence these boys and these girls. We just keep going through this cycle of punishment. It was only until I decided to steal away and look through a different lens that I began to see something that I never saw. As long as we're in the rut of it, sometimes we can't even see the narrative. So to change the narrative, we have to know what that really is. Because sometimes, these taboo terms and slogans, you hear that so much, let's change the narrative. The narrative is the narrative where you are at.
Yes.
Your narrative may not be my narrative.
Correct.
So we can't put an umbrella on what the narrative is.
Correct.
I was recently asked to come sit before the city leaders and discuss police brutality. And one of the presenters attempted to share national stats. And it was like, hold on, time out. we're not going to do that because the national stats is not apropos to the culture of this local region.
Yes.
What is the local stats? Because that's what we're saddled to respond to. Because if I respond because there's something going on national in a local arena, then I could be basically cloaking a good system underneath a bad system. Everything national is not my fight. So how do we change the narrative? Know your fight. Know what you are called to fight and stick to that. You can't fight everybody's battle. And know your assignment. And don't accept something outside of your assignment, because if you do, then here's what I learned. I know that I am called to do certain things. And one of those things is I do go around and speak. I provide professional development. But when somebody asks me to come and speak, for example, like your invitation, I was expecting that invitation.
Yes.
I didn't know it was coming from you, but I felt that there was an acceleration in, you know how you could just feel the moment, like you just know something's getting ready to happen. So you're kind of expecting it. So I was expecting the invitation. I had received 2 prior to yours, and I was like, okay. But at the same time, while I'm reading your invitation, I'm seeing if it aligns with my assignment.
Yes.
And one thing that I saw in your invitation was the word positive. And when I saw that, it connected, it bear witness to what my assignment is. You see, we can run out there and we can try to be everything to all men and fight every battle and accept every assignment and every engagement that we want to. And what ends up happening is, Black men, Black leaders, my sister, my brother, if you find yourself feeling wore out, exhausted, just tired, it could be because the assignment that you are taking on, you're not graced to fulfill that assignment, and it will wear you out. We have to be mature enough to come to a place where we can respectfully decline assignments and narratives that's not our fight. So know the narrative, know if that narrative is your fight, and if it's not, be mature enough to say to someone, I'm so sorry I can't come alongside you in this. I wish you well. I will be in much prayer that the purpose of your assignment will manifest, but I am so sorry, that is not my assignment. Or go ahead and take that assignment. Let me know how that worked out for you. Because if you're not graced to fulfill that assignment, it will wear you out.
Man, you have shared so much wisdom in answering these questions, because not all of us really thinks on that level. Not all of us really understand on that level. And because sometimes we do take on assignments, we do take on work that only become a burden, because it may take you in some rooms, it may take you amongst other people. Then you even in those rooms and you're uncomfortable. You're not really want to be in those rooms just because of what you think that assignment or that work will do for you, for that ego part of you per se. But without wisdom, we even may be missing where we are graced to do great work. And I really appreciate that perspective, because we come across people and they may tell you what they want to do, they may share their passion, but yet they look past their passion or what their purpose is to take on something that may put them with whoever, because it may give them a better presence, stuff like that. But it gives just the perspective that you share, be graced to do the work and understand that what your assignment is, that's your assignment.
And know that in an assignment, when we are called to an assignment, that there are certain tools that we have to fulfill those assignments. And sometimes individuals will attempt to give us their tools and try to put on us their weapons and their tools, and it will wear you down. The same example I gave about King David fighting, as soon as he accepted an assignment, he accepted the assignment because he liked the reward, but he was smart enough to know I'm going to accept this assignment, but I'm a rock thrower. I throw rocks.
That's right.
That's how I win. I throw rocks. I don't carry swords. I don't carry shields. I don't put on helmets. I don't put on breastplates. I don't put on knee pads. I can't wear that stuff y'all wearing. All I need is this little slingshot and these 5 rocks I'm about to pick up off of this ground, because it's not the weapon, it's the assignment and the grace of the assignment. You see, with every assignment, the tools are provided to be successful. We just have to be confident enough to walk in our tools.
Wow.
And to use our tools and not allow people. They've been trying to get me to get out of this country talking for years. But it works for me, because in every room that we go into, like you said, those rooms, everybody in those rooms are not assigned to us. I understand that there are just some people in that room that my grace is for, and the rest of them are just in the room. They're like props to me. I know exactly who I'm called for in the room because I get that same energy from that group. Others, it don't matter what I say or what I do, I'm not going to move them. I'm not going to inspire them. I'm not going to inspire them. They're going to be probably offended by my whole presentation. And I'm good with that, because I understand that there's only few people that I'm called to in every space.
Man, that is powerful and shows.
You just have to be confident in who you are and
That's
what
right.
you are.
That's what I was searching for, that confidence in self, because that's important. When it comes to making an impact, when it comes to be the best version of yourself, be confident in you is really important, because I tell you what I've come to learn, that I'm not going to change for people and then I hate myself because I'm pretending so you can like me. And people tell you every day. Sometimes you may have seen people would say, man, you don't smile a lot. If you smile more, you may have more friends and stuff like that. But it's not that I don't smile a lot. You may not see me when I'm smiling. So it comes back to what you said, where we need to be okay with who we are, and show up in purpose or on purpose, because that's important. And so I'm going to go into the next question, or unless you were going to share something.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. So, and I know you have mentioned this when you were introducing yourself, but I'm going to ask again, because you may have more than one person. So what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on as an educator or a minister?
There are a lot of people, of course, in these experiences that we have, moments that we have. Growing up, I grew up in poverty, of course. I already mentioned that. Of course, my mom, she was my everything. But recently, it's the broken look on a child's face, a little student who made a mistake. And many of these students are being judged just because of the lack of development of their brain. They don't have the caudal frontex to make these reasoning decisions. And sometimes the system becomes a snare to even their development and where they are as developing humans, to categorize them as this, that, and the other because of decisions that they made. But I've stood on one statement for 9 years. I've had students and parents assigned to the alternative school. And mind you, my area is a small area, so people know each other and people talk. You know how people can be. And I've had parents crying in the orientation meetings, and I've had babies, little children, 6 to 12. These are children crying because they don't sense or feel the hope, and they're embarrassed and torn and ripped. And this is the statement that I've stood on. This is the statement that my school stands on. I say to the parents and the students sometimes after all of us finish crying, because you can't help but feel that. You got any type of heart in you. So once we get ourselves together, I say to them this: listen, if you feel the same way that you feel now, with all of the emotions that come with being assigned to an alternative school, if you feel the same way you feel in 2 weeks after being at my school call me back.
Wow.
I have not gotten one phone call yet.
Wow.
Because when that baby comes into my presence, I remember my mom looking at us and telling us, it's not going to always be like this. We're not going to always struggle to pay the rent. We're not going to always have to move in the middle of the night, carry our stuff through the city. Sometimes two of the kids walking on the side of the car, holding mattress on the top of a car, trying to get it from one location to the next because the landlord has said it's time for us to get out because we can't pay the bill. My mama looking at us, telling us it's not going to always be like this. For me to be able to tell those babies that it's not going to always be like this, it brings back those childhood memories of what it takes to make that statement true. Wow. So my faculty and staff understand that when a student walks through their classroom door, that they have been told that if they feel the same way in 2 weeks, to call back to the school. And it has not happened. And I don't plan on it ever happening because all we really have in some people's lives is a 2-week window. Yeah. All we have is 2 weeks. We don't have a long time to make impact. So with that being said, we understand everything we must do in 2 weeks, but we can't do it alone. The culture has to help us. The positive culture that we build helps us to assist those students with gaining momentum that heals those feelings that they have when they're assigned to my school after making mistakes. So there's one man and one man only. My father was not in my life. My father was in prison the majority of my life. My father decided to rob banks and stores, and he did a couple of 15-year stints and 10-year stints in prison. I never had a relationship with him. He ended up being murdered, some say by the Black Mafia, because he was deep into the game when he got out. He had a situation and he was murdered. Wow. So I didn't have a relationship with him. I think I was 16 when he was murdered. But there was one man, his name is Apostle Danny L. Williams. He is my senior pastor. There's one man that I have served since 1994. The defining moment that I had and that I'll share with this audience is, if we can learn to be number one at being number two, doors open for us. Wow. When I learned how to be number one at being number two, doors began to open because my servitude was to a man and his vision. And I stayed committed. I've never been a part of another ministry. I've had moments where, of course, I disagreed and didn't like this and didn't like that. But I've been a part of this ministry, learning how to be number one at being number two, learning how to submit myself underneath a leader and to carry the weight of his vision so that the things that he would worry about, I'm worrying about them and not him. So as leader, if there is not a person or a thing that we are serving and all we want to be is served, we are self-serving. Wow. I learned not to be that. The best way is to allow yourself to submit to someone and humble yourself and serve that person, and doors will open that will blow your mind.
That is a great reminder. That is a great reminder. Be number one at number two. But it shows just be respectful to the person that's ahead of you. And they will be more open to teach you. They'll be more open to guide you. And again, as you said, doors will be open and stuff like that. So and being number one at number two, that shows you are giving your best effort. Not because you're not the leader, but whichever position or whichever role, I believe, just listening to what you say, we should always, always give our best, regardless of us being at the top, the middle, or the bottom, wherever. We must always give our best, because in giving our best, we're always representing who we are. And by doing that, as you mentioned, doors will be open, because you can't say, you know what, I'm not going to do as much as I can because you know what? I'm not the one leading. I'm not the one that's going to get the spotlight, but it's in doing the best work you can. So I really appreciate that perspective. And as you know, you mentioned there were several people that
Hmm.
inspire you on your journey to be the person that you are today. So that leads me to this question. What is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
I um I often ponder this question, and it's very complex with the culture that we are living in. I do not understand, but I know it's an issue of why it is a lot of times so difficult to collaborate, to work together in spite of the backgrounds we come from, the belief systems that we may have, the gods that we serve. I don't understand that part of the culture. The challenge for me is trying to overcome the stigma of the way we see each other and trying to understand why there seems to still yet be the spirit of competition to the degree that you could really name it from some of the things that were embedded in us through our ancestors and our fight against slavery and being enslaved as a people. The South, in which I'm from, it's very, very prevalent to the degree, to be honest, Dr. Cross, I've come to a place now where I literally, I'm intentional about I step right in the pathway of a brother that I see coming towards me, but getting ready to drop that head and look at the sidewalk to keep from looking at me
Mhm.
speaking, just speaking.
Yeah.
And I'm intentional about getting eye contact to speak to that brother, to give him a little nod to let him know I am you and you are me. So there ain't nothing here between us. When I go to speaking engagements and I get that same energy, like we get in the elevator and I ain't nobody or nothing until I'm doing a workshop or something, and now you feel like I got something to give you.
Mhm.
Then we down and we no. On a very simplistic level, the mere fact that our skin color is the same puts us in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this spirit comes from. I don't know if it's the Jim Crow South. I don't know if the Jim Crow North or the East and the West Jim Crow. I don't know. But you can always feel that there's something that would try to cause us to feel some sense of competition against each other. Hence, not really being able to collab. Everything that I'm given, everything that I give does not have a price tag on it. I will speak just to help the next brother to just to be the bridge, you know.
Yes.
And I have men and women in my lives that do the same, but totality, in a total sense, we still got a lot of work to do as relates to how comfortable we are with building each other up, celebrating each other, recognizing each other, and the culture has this issue, and that is there is too much I ministry going on.
Hmm.
If I look at your social media page and all I see is that you elevating you, I want to tell you all something. I like the guru of gurus 24/7. It's all about I. Come on. I mean, we have built these we can build these false sense of who we really are
Mhm.
through these platforms or whatever. And if I don't sense the spirit of humility, because this is what I've learned and this is what I've stood on. A man or a woman with an experience is never at the mercy of a man or a woman with an argument.
Mhm.
And I know the difference between an experience and an argument. And lots of times it's how we prop it up. But I'm speaking from a place of experience and what I walked through, and you're speaking of a place of whatever, and it's okay. We still can be able to help each other. I don't sense that there is enough openness to help and to empower, like platforms like this, that obviously you're here to build a positive impact on the next generation and current and aspiring leaders.
Yes.
Fine. But that spirit of competition still is kind of
Yeah.
is weird.
It is, and sometimes you have to wonder, as you mentioned, it's part of maybe what we have been conditioned to think: if I'm up, you can't be up. But I was listening to, I think it was Robert Johnson of BET, and in his interview a long time ago, he said he was told as a black man he couldn't up or help another black man. And I was like, how could that be? But then you be seeing so many black males who are successful today. And then you be wondering, why are we still in the situations that we're in? So it goes back to what you said. Sometimes, is it conditioning? Is it something that we have been ingrained to believe that if I'm up, you can't be. If I am successful, you can't be. So those are some of the challenges that we're dealing with today. But I believe for us to go forward, the collaboration has to be a part of what's going to propel us forward. My next question is, what change do you want to see in general and amongst black men? I know you mentioned earlier about collaboration and the importance of working together. And for us to move forward, working together is important. But what other change would you like to see in general amongst us as black men?
I want to see us shift to where we were as a people, where the adults in a community would protect the future, the futures of the young people. Oftentimes nowadays, it seemeth though the older ones are okay with pulling young adults into activities that we know are not good for their upbringing. There was a time when I was trying to become a basketball player to build my mom a house because I wanted to make it to the NBA, that the adults in that community would not allow me to participate in certain activities. If they thought I was anywhere close to it,
Wow.
they'd be grabbing me by the ear and pulling me back to the house and giving me a mouthful, because they would continue to tell me that you have an opportunity and a gift to get out of this neighborhood and to do something big, and we're not going to allow you to participate in certain things. There was this one individual who I can remember, if I wasn't in the house by 11 o'clock when he did a check, because my mom worked as a waitress. Sometimes she had to work the 11 to 7 shift.
Wow.
And this is one of the gangbangers. I ain't talking about some church guy. This was a gangbanger who would drive by slow. And if I didn't indicate that I was in that house, there was going to be problems the next time he saw me, because he was not going to have me out in the streets while my mother worked. The community and the neighborhood was taking care of the young folk in the community. Now it seems as though we are inviting them to be a part of activities that we know is not productive for them to be a part of. It's not productive for the adults to be a part of, but it's one thing for us to invite and solicit young folk to be a part of these activities. We didn't have that in the community. When I grew up, we had people that were protecting us from that and shielding us from that, especially if they felt like we had an opportunity to make it out, because we were all trying to make it out. So I'd like to see more of an effort from the community in that regards. And this "you can't tell me anything" mindset of the current culture, this "I know it all" mindset of the current culture. I spent most of my time listening to old men under the tree.
That's right.
Who were telling me things that could help me along the way. These were guys that they call them winos where I'm from. You know, these guys that sit under the tree and drink wine, but those old men, they could tell you what path not to go on and what path to stay on. They had wisdom, even though they were still drinking that MD 2020 or Moonstone or whatever they were drinking under the tree. So having a respect for our elders, young adults, respect, my grandmother said, is due to a dog. And so having respect for elders is something that I'm big on. I don't think that just because they don't know the latest technology and they don't have the latest social media accounts that we discount their existence just because they're elderly.
Yeah.
I think respecting our elders is a big key to why our community has broken down. There were times that if we saw somebody that was older than us, that was in the community, we'd turn our music down.
Oh yeah.
If we were drinking something, we'd put it away. We just had that respect for those in the community. So I love to see us protect the youth and respect the elderly.
And I think that those are really important in moving forward, especially we need the wisdom, we need insights, and we need perspective. And if we can be protected from pitfalls, we should make sure
Mm-hmm.
we position ourselves to get that insight so we can go forward on our journey. But I want to go back to one thing that you mentioned early in the conversation, where about being protected and have this anointing on you and stuff like that. But it even shows when that person comes in the community, even though, as you said, he wasn't a church person, he was more so a person affiliated with gangs and stuff like that. But he saw something in you. You see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And he believes that, you know what, because of your ability, we're going to make sure we protect you. And that
Mm-hmm.
is so important. And we don't need no certificate for that. We don't need to go to school for that. All we need to do is to make sure we play our role in our communities. We see a young man that have potential, and sometimes may not even seems to have the potential, but some that encouragement may give that person a sense of belief or a sense of belonging or a sense of purpose. And I think it goes back to, man, what you shared, but the anointing has been there all along, where
Mm-hmm.
people who could come to you who you may not think would. And but we have to realize that we all have a role to play when it comes to moving the needle forward, when it comes to
Yes.
creating positive change. And
Yes.
you know, you have shared so many different powerful experience and examples. So my next question is, what was a pivotal moment in your life? And you have touched on a few, but just to remind the listeners, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
Well, the moment where my daughter asked me if I was going to be around for the pictures, I will never forget that moment, because that was a humble reminder that even as men and women who feel that we are called and appointed to change the narrative and move the needle forward, we cannot forget that it's a sad testimony to be a public success and a private failure.
Wow.
If we lose our very seed in the process of changing the narrative and in the process of moving the needle forward, and it costs us our families, then that is the epitome of being unsuccessful. I know some individuals may disagree, but that's our reality, that family has always been at the forefront of our responsibilities. And we must understand that there must be balance. We must have balance in the fact that while we have these professional responsibilities, and in some cases we look at them as callings, it can never be at the expense of the family unit. My son, who's now at Florida Memorial University in Miami, Florida, on a scholarship to play football, and my daughter, who is a junior at Florida Memorial University in Tallahassee, both are attending HBCUs. They are foremost my responsibility to pour into, to invest in, even though most of my day on my job requires my attention when I'm on my job. They know that there's nothing that I'm doing throughout the day that requires me to be totally disconnected from them and what they may be experiencing in a day. So they are not underneath my roof, but they are carrying my seed in them. That's my legacy. My legacy is defined by my family and how I handle the family unit. Now, those of us who are leaders who may not have a wife and children, we have sisters and brothers and aunties and uncles, because sometimes these professions can pull us in so many different directions that it literally removes us from the roots in which we sprung from. So family unit has to be at the forefront, has to be.
Yes, and that's a great reminder as we go forward, because family has been, especially in the Black community, a pillar of our community. And I think if we're thinking about going forward and going forward strong, going forward together would be our best remedy. And that's where family comes in. So thanks for sharing that perspective, because it's important, and we'll be strong and stronger together when we put family first. So my next question is, what life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation?
One of the things that in this journey that I've been on with embracing myself is, number one, don't suffer from misplaced expectations. Misplaced expectations is expecting something from someone or something that does not have the capacity to give it to you. Expecting something from someone that don't have the capacity to do it or give it can cost you years of time. It can cause you pain. It can cause you setbacks, because we can be literally expecting something and misplacing our expectations on individuals, and that is unfair to them. They don't have the capacity to do it.
Yes.
Some are not doing it not because they are nasty, it's just they don't have the capacity to do it. So we have to understand that our expectations of others is important, that it is balanced and that it's realistic. And lastly, when it comes to expectations, and this is probably one of the biggest things that I've learned, is this: people do not do what we expect, they do what we monitor. So just because we expect it, as a leader, I've learned that that's not where we get things done. Where we get things done is when we monitor what we expect, because people do not do what we expect. They do what they see us monitoring. They take our expectations that we monitor, and because we monitor it, and monitoring it doesn't mean that we just keep our eyes on it. It means that we are aware of where that expectation is in the process of manifestation. We either are going to water that expectation, we're going to uproot any type of weed that would grow and hinder the growth of that expectation. We're going to fertilize that expectation by pouring resources into it. And so we are going to be a part of the process of growing an expectation from expectation to manifestation. So when people see that we are willing to put the energy of doing what needs to be done, monitoring our expectation to get that expectation from expectation to manifestation, that's what people invest in.
Well, that's a great reminder, because we, as you said, have the expectation, but you don't check up on that expectation, what you expect to be done. And then if you don't show any interest in, even if the person have been doing it, but because you haven't followed up, you haven't checked in, you haven't seen where this is going periodically, and even acknowledge any accomplishment in the process, some people can get discouraged. So I really appreciate that reminder, because again, some people may get burned out from doing the work that they don't believe someone else appreciate.
Absolutely. People know when we are a part of the process, because they will see three attributes from us.
Yes.
They will see that we are visible, approachable, and accessible. And when people see that we are visible, approachable, and accessible, then the relationship between leader and under leader begins to take on its full purpose, and things begin to manifest, because the leader is not one of those leaders that you never see, you never can access, and you never can approach. Yeah. So we have to make sure that we're visible, accessible, and approachable. as leaders, especially in this culture where a lot of times, especially in education, if the first thing I'm going to do if I ever get invited on the campus is I'll probably ask the least of the individuals on campus, tell me about your leader. That's the question I'm going to tell me about your leader. And then I'm going to probe that question to pull from them, is that leader accessible, approachable, and visible?
I think that is important, and people like to make connections with the people that they are working for. It makes them feel as if they matter, and when people feel they matter, they will go above and beyond to get things done. And I think, and I make sure I drop myself some notes here, because those points are really important to remember, especially as leaders, that you want to be visible, accessible, and approachable. People should want to talk to you, and I think that is important. So before I ask my final question, Principal Presley, if you don't mind, please, if you can tell the listeners where they can find and support the incredible work that you're doing.
Well, if there's educators that have viewed any portion of the recording and would like additional information on how we shifted a school from an alternative school to a non-traditional school, teaching non-traditional students and non-traditional instructional practices, they can reach me by looking me up on Facebook or Instagram, Principal Presley or James C. Presley. I'm not too big to where they can't even email me. They can email me at Dream Center BS. The B is for basketball school and the B is for basketball and the S is for school. Dream Center BS at AOL.com. Or they can try to email me at school, but with all the filters we have there, they may get thrown into spam or something. But my school email address is james.presley, Presley, at Sumter, sumter.k12.fl.us. I have a consulting support and services company, LLC, Shift LLC, Shift Educational Support and Services, because everything is not about services. Sometimes schools just need you to come in and provide some support to their team. So they can reach me at 352-461-3641. Or they can message me, of course, through Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger, any of the platforms, Twitter. They can find me at Principal James Presley 86 on Twitter. And if not, hit my cell phone up. I'm not too big to answer text. So I can answer text or call you back to try to connect with you. So they can email me, text me, or reach out to me on social media platforms.
Okay, man, that sounds great. And I'll definitely put a link so they can connect with you to find out more of what you're doing and continue to learn from you.
Okay.
So I'll definitely put that in the description. So my final question is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
I want the underdog. I want the student who nobody thinks can make it to look back over his or her life and say that they came across a man that saw something in them that they did not see in themselves. And that man watered what he saw and attempted to set them on solid ground so they can walk it out. I just want to help someone who has all of the odds stacked against them. They don't have the pedigree, they don't have the background. No one would expect that a person with their resume or rap sheet would be able to make it. And I want them to understand that with that responsibility comes another responsibility for them to also help pull someone else up. At the end of the day, we are our brother's keepers, and sometimes we are our brother's children keeper, and so forth and so on. So it's not to bring fame to my name or money to my pockets. It's to help someone else see that they can make it. If I can come out of a 2-bedroom apartment with 7 other brothers and sisters, with my mother raising us alone on $2.10 an hour as a waitress and welfare, and moving from place to place in the middle of the night, with a father who is incarcerated. I visited him one time when I was 9 years old, and after that experience, I can remember I had a mirror in our house, in our apartment, and I would look myself in the mirror and I would tell myself, "You will never go to prison.
Wow.
You will never go to prison." In fact, after I visited him at 9, I didn't want to return. I didn't like the way the doors, the iron doors would shut and the gates would shut. It was something just did something to me inside. And I told my mom I'd never go back to that place. So I told myself that I would never go to prison, never be incarcerated. And at the end of the day, I want my children to know that they have a father in the house and that they are not alone, that the protector is in the house. And I didn't have that. My mom was trying to provide and protect, and 7 children. Sometimes when my children are home, I don't know. I try to get them to explain how it feels to have a father in the house, because I don't know how that feels. I've never experienced that. And they try to explain it, and I still don't know how that feels. So I just want the fathers to step up and to be there for their children, even if it means you don't have everything that you think you have, but don't abort your family. Stay in your family and don't be a public success and a private failure. And I want us to collaborate and continue to strengthen our communities. I think that if we can strengthen our communities, then our communities will be strengthened. The cavalry is not coming. We are the cavalry.
That's right.
They are not coming. We are it. We are the ones that are called to strengthen our communities. And the person that's at the ground level or root level, that's not me. I'm not in the hood, but I'm strengthening my community through an educational platform. I'm trying to educate the next generation. Now I have access. They understand where my community understands where I stand and what I stand for. So they don't expect to see me in certain events, and they know not to invite me to some. But they also understand that there's a role I understand that I play, and I'm going to play that role. So I just want us to understand that the cavalry is not coming, and we are the cavalry.
Man, and that's a great reminder. And also, where you mentioned that you want the underdog to know that they can be successful, and everyone out here needs a champion, needs someone who will believe in them. And that's very important, because not all of us will have the support system. Not all of us will have someone cheering for us. So having a champion in someone can go a long way. And Principal Presley, I can tell you, this conversation was great. I enjoyed the conversation, great insights, great perspective, and looking forward for future conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Because most of these topics could go on and on and on. But I know with our time, but it was well spent. And again, thanks for being here on the Black Male Impact.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and blessings to you and your audience.
Man, thank you very much. And as always, listeners, thanks for being here on the Black Male Impact. As always, our goal is to inspire positive change. Continue to give us your support as we bring the best guests that we can find to you. Again, thanks for your support, and looking forward to sharing with you again on the Black Male Impact.